Welcome, dear colleagues and dear students, so many people. You're sure you're in the right place at the right time? I hope you won't be disappointed, so many people. Wonderful. It's great to be here at Lüneburg. It's the first time I can see this picturesque, wonderful city and of course this prestigious university, Leuphana University. Looking at this cartoon, you see more or less a cartoon summary of what we are going to talk about, balanced teaching. Balanced teaching is somewhere in between teacher guidance on the one hand and student-centeredness on the other. If it's okay with you, I would like to structure my presentation into those 5 parts. What is balanced teaching in the narrow sense? In the second part, why should we resort to BT? In the third, where does it come from? A few words on the genesis or history. Then in the fourth part, what is new about balanced teaching, if there is anything new about it. And E, what is balanced teaching in the broad sense? By the way, if you're not happy with what I say as far as, well, style or argumentation or content or structure or whatever is concerned, just raise your hands and say rubbish or balderdash, I disagree. Of course we may have an extended evaluation and discussion phase later on, but you're free to raise your hands and disagree with me, because what I'm going to say is not really revolutionary, it's more of common sense and, well, saying farewell to bandwagon hopping and taking up every fashion which is en vogue. Is it okay if I structure that presentation into 5 parts? If it's not okay, I would have a problem, of course, because the presentation is fixed and I can't really change it anyway. We may skip a few, a few slides if you say that's old to me, nothing new. What is balanced teaching in the narrow sense? Well, it's a combination or a synthesis or a symbiosis, whatever you call it, between open language teaching, open English language teaching, open foreign language teaching, because it may be transferred to teaching French, Russian, Italian or whatever, and closed English language teaching. It turns up in different forms, and it is, of course, dependent on lots of variables, in particular you. You as a teacher to be, what is your attitude towards open and closedness? That's the main variable. I mean, we could have this silly technique from the drama approach, everybody coming up front to me, and you have to position yourself on the left side or the right side or in the middle. Although you don't know too much now about closed language teaching and open language teaching, where are you at the moment? Closed language teaching being teacher-fronted. You know the term Frontalunterricht, frontal teaching. And open language teaching, student-centered, creative, individual, autonomous learner in the foreground. Who is in the middle? I'm absolutely balanced. I'm not, of course, I'd like to be. Who is in the middle? Who is right-wing? Not really in a political sense, but closed. Who is closed? And who is open? You don't have to come to me, but let me see your hands. Who would say, I'm closed? The teacher is the boss, teacher-fronted, teacher-centered, direct instruction. Hands up. Come on. If I ask that question in different federal states in Germany, I get more hands. Who is open? Not really left-wing, but teacher is just guide on the side. Who is in the middle? Hands up. Okay, let's skip it then. Farewell. The presentation is over. I don't have to convince you of this balanced teaching approach. I also would have given you the chance to stand like that, half right or half left. Okay, but never seen such an audience. All of them balanced. Fantastic. Why balanced teaching? Let's have a closer look at the two extreme types of closed language teaching and open language teaching. Closed English language teaching, if you practice that in the pure sense, you face lots of criticism. Teacher-centered, teacher-fronted instruction, we call it. You know the German terms, which differ, of course, but more or less go into that direction. Teacher-fronted classrooms have faced criticism over the last 30 or 40 years. And if you practice it, the following points of criticism may turn up. First point of criticism. You are right all the time. You have all the answers. Remember, the aim of all good teaching was and is to demonstrate to the learners what he or she does not know. The motto is, it is my right to be right. Second point of criticism. You let students do nothing. You let them see how much you know and can do all the work yourself, explain what you did the previous lesson yourself, read out the text yourself, read out the questions yourself, answer the questions yourself, write the answers on the board yourself, and then rub the board clean yourself. Next point of criticism, you teach the book, because you start from page 1 and go straight through to the last page of the textbook, lesson after lesson, unit after unit. Textbook writers are omniscient, they know everything. You are benighted, you know nothing, as Socrates said, and your students don't know nothing neither, never, as Bob Dylan used to sing. Next point of criticism, you assume students know nothing. You feel, I can't draw on their experience of life, their knowledge of the world. If they haven't understood, that is their problem, not mine. Or as the ex-president of a superpower once said, if they can't stand the heat, they should get out of the kitchen. Next point of criticism, you are predictable. You have a fixed routine for doing everything, so students know exactly what is coming. You always begin with presentation, always follow with practice, always finish with production. That is why the letters PPP appear in that order. Stick to PPP and you will never come unstuck. Next thing, you believe in sameness. You think all classes are of the same level, all students work at the same pace, and those 3 words at the bottom remain foreign words you don't know about. Another point, you are boring. You slavishly follow the IRF pattern, impulse, reaction, feedback. You do not vary the pitch in your voice, you do not distinguish between explanations and questions, instructions and decides the beginning or the end of your discourse, the serious bits and the funny ones. God gave you one voice, you should not make yourself another. Hamlet, Shakespeare. You are boring, of course, a very tremendous point of criticism. And your critics tell you you have got a high teacher talking time. You know that definition of teacher-fronted classrooms, wenn viele schweigen und einer spricht, nennt man dieses Unterricht. Studies have found out that TTT is 80%. In the DESI studies it was just 55%. In a few minor studies it was 95%. Anyway, STT, student talking time, is, too little. But as Pavlov once said, imitation is the mother of learning, and as Skinner added, parrots learn best. Another thing, you want to be the boss. For you it's important to exert authority, control, power, security. If you neglect democracy and reduce discipline to appearances, well, this has to be taken as collateral damage. You use the Nuremberg Trichter. You rely on passive and receptive learning, ignore autonomy, SOL, self-organized learning, and social competencies. What else is criticized? You believe in the fallacy of the single course. You really think that the relationship between teaching and learning is causal. It is not, it's just contingent. What you teach is not what your pupils learn. What you provide as input is not the same as what pupils then show you as output. What is in between is not really put. I think Stephen Krashen took the term of intake, but well, what happens in between? Intake or put? We don't know. You love yourself. As this classical hero in mythology, you want to satisfy your narcissistic needs. So, all of that, these are the points of criticism in a distorted sense. If you look at closed English language teaching in a more unbiased, objective way, you may see the following benefits. It is very effective. You can plan your lessons very carefully. The cognitive intensity of teacher-fronted classrooms is much higher than open classrooms. You have your teacher talk, the classroom dialogue. You can guide that in the way you want it to have. And by the way, the first two arguments have been researched rather thoroughly and have been proven to be valid. We may argue about the points to come, but the fact that closed English language teaching is more effective than open language teaching in the cognitive domain, of course. I'm not talking about interpersonal, social, affective variables, but in the cognitive domain, closed language teaching is very effective. You can teach a lot in a very short time. You give your pupils orientation. There may be a lively interaction dependent on you, of course, on the personality of a teacher. And you are a role model. I mean, why are you studying? Why have you studied to become a teacher? If then you give all your power, your control, your guidance over to your pupils. You are the boss. You have studied years and years at universities. You are a role model as far as language is concerned. You have method competence, etc. Whether or not you like that argument, innere Auszeit, closed English language teaching is a relief for pupils. They take their time out, relax. Classroom discourse, you may build up continuously a nice conversation and communication between you and your pupils. Method competence, you can use various techniques, procedures, approaches. Preparation, cost-benefit relationship. Well, yes, teachers are busy. You have 23 lessons a week or even more. You need time. So if you do textbook guided teaching, teacher-fronted, it may save time for you, which does not mean that I say you should be lazy teachers, on the contrary. No, but you can't prepare really open teaching sequences all the time. And it is popular with pupils. If you ask pupils, the first time they say, oh, I don't like teacher-fronted classroom, it's too boring, etc. If you ask them a second time, they often say, yeah, it's okay, it's fine. They have a feeling of learning, of being prepared well for tests, including their parents. So, you may now judge for yourself, do I rather tend to the first points of criticism or to the other? The 10 benefits or pros mentioned here. Let's turn to the left wing side, the open side, open English language teaching. I'm sure you know some of these procedures or approaches. I've tried to group them into 6 categories, from task-based to interaction-based. I'm sure you have heard of task-based language learning, TBA or TBLL. Lots of my colleagues favor that approach. It has become very popular in German classrooms, not only in German ones. Station learning or carousel approach, project work. Gamification now, playing, simulations. If there are any approaches you don't know, ask me. Do they ring a bell with you, more or less? Improvisation. Have you heard of Jürgen Kurz? He has done his postdoc paper on improvisations, spontaneous speaking, bus stop technique, etc., in which pupils have to act and speak spontaneously. You may have open lead-ins, breaks. Nobody in our field talks about breaks, pausen, which we need. Tessa Woodward has taken up that topic, breaks. She tells her pupils, walk out of the classroom, come back in 3 minutes, and then, for example, tell me about 3 things which are blue. Or another teacher, one of my teachers, he had a 2-minute window break. He opened the window, looked out of the window, and then talked to people walking by. In English, if it is done in English, well, you may be skeptical about those things, I know. Also, surprise-sensitive teaching, which may be the equivalent of überraschungstoleranter Unterricht. You may plan your lessons perfectly, but it does not prevent reality from happening. Have your plan B. Tessa Woodward calls surprises hijacks, when pupils try to take over, not your aeroplane, but your classroom. Or what happens when they fall off the chairs or get sick or whatever. What do? That's where the real art of teaching comes in, as Mühlmann says. You know, you have heard of LDL or cooperative learning. Cooperative learning not being the same as group work. It's not enough simply to put our pupils into groups of 3 and 4. Very often that does not work. If you guide them, if you have a plan, a time limit, if you give them a task, and if you ask for a result after 10 minutes, then it may work. That's what the American proponents of cooperative learning tell us, with different techniques like placemat or round robin or think pair share, etc. No doubt open language teaching has its benefits. It may contribute to autonomy, it may activate our pupils, they may become creative and cooperative and be motivated. But let's be honest. There are also drawbacks. My own experience, the classrooms we observed, what we found quite often, there were classroom management problems. Lots of noise, too loud. Inactivity going nowhere. The Germans use the term Leerlauf. 45 minutes, lots of lessons. The effective, the real learning time was 12 minutes, 15 minutes. The average, according to Penny is 24 minutes effective learning time in a 45-minute lesson, which is not too much anyway. But if inactivity, Leerlauf, is more than 30 minutes, then it's a bit much. Don't you want language input or language output from your pupils? Mother tongue small talk. They fall back into their L1. They talk about football match of the day before or shopping queen or whatever. Last day's TV program in German. Action instead of reflection. Multimedia show for the sake of multimedia. Using 12 different media. Well, what are my targets, my objectives? My aims are first. The media are media. Medium serving something. If I need certain media, definitely. I hope I don't say silly things now, Torben. I know I'm afraid of looking at you because you're the expert of media, digital media and interactive media, I know. So raise your hand and say, rubbish. But a colleague last week told me in those open classrooms there is a lot of sizzle and not much steak in the frying pan. The teacher, the sage on the stage, has been dethroned. You're no longer allowed to be the giver of information or the drill sergeant. No. You have to be the guide on the side and the coach and the facilitator. The students very often produce rubbish, pulp. But in the name of autonomy and creativity and individuality, everything is allowed. Do you know what we heard lots of times from pupils when they had too much project work, hot seats, web search, station learning, internet research? Have a guess? Pardon? Can you use the workbook again? Yeah, we heard that as well. That's true. But what else? Yeah. You may say it in German because it was very often a spontaneous reaction. Auf Bayerisch, wann macht man endlich mal wieder einen gescheiten Unterricht? Wann machen wir eigentlich wieder richtigen Unterricht? After 3 weeks of project work, in which German was spoken. Wer alles offen hat, kann nicht ganz dicht sein. So you see, closed language teaching has its benefits and drawbacks. Open language teaching has its pros and cons. So the usual way, the simplest way then is to steer through the middle. Balanced teaching. Where does it come from? Well, we may go back to the greatest of all, or the second greatest after Plato, Aristotle. In his Nicomachean Ethics, he proposed the golden mean, die goldene Mitte. Avoiding the two extremes. He was in favor of beauty, symmetry, harmony. Or, if you don't like the Greek philosophers, favor Confucius, he also spoke for the mean, the middle. In Buddhism, it's the middle way. In Taoism, you've heard of yin-yang. You know, this symbol. So balanced teaching, you see, is nothing new, basically. If you are into architecture and like Palladian villas, then you know what harmony is, beauty, the mean, the middle. Or if you prefer Baroque music from Pachelbel, just listen to this canon and you will see that's it. That's the middle, the harmony of life. You find balance. Which of you is not trying to find work-life balance? Who has found it? Balanced diet. You find this metaphor or this topos or this concept of balance everywhere. And in particular, the most important field, football, of course, soccer. I'm sure Germany just won the World Cup in Brazil last year because they have found the balance, a compromise between being defensive and offensive. So that should be enough as arguments for balance. If we rather turn to our fields, in psychology, the Munich-based psychologist Heinz Mandl, together with his colleague Reinmann Rottmeier, he is sick of this paradigm conflict between instructivism and constructionism or constructivism. That's why he pleads for constructivist instruction or instructivist construction or wissensbasierter Konstruktivismus, whatever, something in the middle. Don't go for constructivism only. Don't go for instructivism only either. In educational research, Schäfer Yoshioka designed the concept of balanced thinking. And now you see I made it quite easy for me and just replaced thinking by teaching, and then we've got a new term, balanced thinking. They also found out we need both guidance and freedom. Human beings want to be dependent on the one hand, but autonomous on the other. They like uniformity, but also want to be special. In other words, they want to close and open their lives. Wer A wie Autonomie sagt. Now, task. Finish this sentence. You have 10 seconds time. Oh ja, wer A wie Autonomie sagt, muss B wie Balance sagen, wie Balance. Very good. Any other suggestion? Muss auch B wie Betreuung oder Beratung sagen. Because you can't go into your classroom at 8 in the morning and say, good morning, boys and girls. Today, let's be autonomous. Let's be creative. Let's be individuals. But you must gradually develop that. You must lay the foundations and the basis by instruction. Then they can construct something. Or as Robert Musil in his wonderful novel once said, wenn ich eine Weltanschauung haben will, muss ich mir die Welt anschauen. Our pupils can't have a way of looking at the world immediately. We must lay the foundations as teacher. As far as empiric,
where is the instruction here?
Muss ich mir die Welt anschauen? The teacher, as the instructor, first has to look at the world. He has to structure teaching for the pupils. And then based on that, on the teacher's worldview, outlook on life, pupils may construct and create their own, but they need a basis.
How about demonstrating versus instructing?
I don't see a contradiction really between demonstrating and instructing. You may also demonstrate. Demonstration usually is part of instruction. If you give them a model. In the same way as in teacher education, you also need some models, although this model of craftsmanship is in doubt by now. But first you must look at some teachers, good ones, bad ones, some in the middle, and then create and develop your own style. You can't go into your referendariat and say, I will develop my own personality and my style. I am myself. Where do you have your samples, your examples, your models? Negative and positive role models. And it's the same level below. Our pupils need guidance and the basis. Is it okay? As far as empirical evidence is concerned, when I was teacher in those 20 years, the lessons which I didn't like were the ones which were too open, too much group work. Maybe it's my personal aversion to group work, but it didn't really work as a pupil, student, teacher, etc. When my lessons were too teacher-fronted, they weren't too good either. So let's be honest. Also, Hospitationen, sitting in on classes, classroom observation. We observed 37 schools in Bavaria. It was a reform project which tells you that even in Bavaria there may be reforms from time to time. It was called Modus 21, Modellschulen, etc. They tried out open methods, and very often when the teachers taught in too open a way, the lessons were not good. Classroom action research, we told our students, okay, first teach in a teacher-fronted way, then in an open way, and tell us. Then it was easy to tell them, balance may be the right way. In a survey, 82 teachers and 100% told us we want balanced teaching. It's just a matter of putting the questions, of course, so that you get the right answers. Anyway, the Hattie study, you've heard of that, John Hattie? Have you heard?
Yes.
Right. Hattie study, the teacher matters. The teacher must be in control. It's not the guide on the side metaphor, but he must be a director, regisseur, director. What counts is cognitive activation. You must activate your pupils cognitively and communicatively. You must give them a clear structure. And a clear structure is what Hilbert Meyer in his famous book, Was ist guter Unterricht, from 2004 told us. He has got 10 criteria for good teaching. And number one, half of the book is on number one, is Klarheit, clarity, clear structure. And giving them feedback, one of the most time-consuming things if you do it in a qualitatively good, individualized way. Not just saying, okay, not bad, super. What is new about balanced teaching? I'm afraid I'm not Günther Jauch. Still, let's play Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? You have one of 4 choices. Who is for A? Everything is new about balanced teaching. Definitely. Would be unfair if not. B is nothing. C is, it reminds us of the value of balance. So we again start to think of common sense, gesunder Menschenverstand. We know that in academic disciplines the pendulum swings to and fro. There are some fashions which may vanish in no time at all. It tells us we shouldn't jump on every bandwagon. Lots of bandwagons and fashions are being driven through our educational landscape. Or you may worry about then falling off the bandwagon, and it reminds you of the individuality of the teacher. Everybody talks about heterogeneity, the heterogeneity of pupils. What about the heterogeneity of teachers? Each of us are different. You are different from me, so are you from her. We are all individuals, as Monty Python would sing in the Life of Brian. But we are individuals. Nobody really cares about the teacher's individuality. Teachers should care about the pupil's individuality. Balanced teaching helps you. You may find your own way. Balanced teaching does not mean you have to stand in the middle and be balanced every lesson, every minute of your life. nonsense, you can't. But over the course of a school year, in one class at least, you should find a balance. And you may teach one lesson in a more frontal way and the other in a more open way. And answer D would be balanced teaching in the broad sense. Now you know. And you have to decide. If not, you can't win anything. It's the $1 million question. Who says everything? Mm-hmm. You're right. Who says nothing, I tell you? Would be also okay if you raised your hands. Actually, nothing is new about it. Who says, I go for C? Hands up. Yeah. Who says D? We don't know. What is balanced teaching in the broad sense? Well, maybe a mixture of B, C, and D could be the right answer. We have to have a look at balanced teaching in the broad sense. What is it? First, criterion standards. Everybody talks of competences, Kompetenzorientierung. We live in the course era, Kompetenzobsessionssyndrom, the Germans could say. We are no longer allowed to talk and speak of skills, but must always say competence. Let's not forget about content, Inhalt. Huh? Not only I can do, I can speak, I can listen, but what can I speak? And what can I read? As far as competences are concerned, try to go for an integrated skill approach. If you buy that book, then you are on a safe way to educational heaven anyway. But the bonus of that book is 2 DVDs with 12 videographed lessons. And then you will see how you can vary your skills. Okay, so the inevitable 1-minute propaganda PR show, sorry for that. But for example, if you have a look at the third lesson on speaking, Miss Gussmann in grade 9, the core competence in that lesson is speaking. She tries to develop speaking competence, but what she does is she furthers reading, listening, writing, but all of them contributing to a promotion of speaking. Structure. Have a structure in your lesson. For example, Miss Gussmann, I don't know whether we can have a look at her lesson later on. She has a warm-up, a lead-in, then textbook phase, then listening to a CD, then preparing a dialogue, and at the end, acting out a dialogue. Topics, try to have a balance between what the curriculum, the famous Lehrplan, tells you and what the real interests of your students are. Of course, linguistic competences are the most important ones. That's the core part of our profession. But there may be extra language issues as well. Interaction patterns, the English equivalent of Sozialformen. My students, what they often do in their internship lessons, Praktikums, Stunden, they have a short input by the teacher, 1 or 2 minutes, and then they say, get together in groups. And then they leave them in groups for 15 minutes, and then they get back. Group work may be okay, but try to balance and find out how long must be teacher talk or silent work. Silent work even in a speaking lesson. Speed, a very difficult thing to balance, to be honest. Each of us is faster or slower than the other. But you may have faster paces, phases. You may have slower if you say, when can we turn to our workbook again? A workbook phase may be a slower phase, also balanced between speaking and writing mode. Activities. Penny coined this contrast between stir and settle activities. You must activate, stir your pupils, but not for 45 minutes. You must calm them down, cool them down, settle them down. The question is when to do which and the other. Usually you are given the piece of advice, you have to first be calm, because if you start by giving them a stir activity, you can't get them back to coolness again. Tasks and exercises. I'm afraid I'm not totally convinced of the task-based approach. We still need exercises. There are a few lessons in here in which teachers jump too early and too fast to open tasks. To my mind, you need a progression, a development from exercises to tasks. For example, in the speaking lesson, the task then is acting out the dialogue, but this has to be prepared by a lead-in, by a textbook working phase, by a preparation in pair work, etc. And by closed exercises. Why not gap fill? I don't mind gap fill, but balancing them. Very often our classes are too much of open tasks, one step after the other, I'd say. Working mode, also, of course, speaking is in everybody's mouth today, but we still need writing. And when we want to practice and further speaking competence, some written exercises are of value. You know about the balance in difficulty, focus. Fluency is fine. Accuracy has not died and vanished from the world. We still need our pupils to be correct, to know a bit of grammar, spelling, pronunciation, lexical accuracy. I get the feeling that here the pendulum has swung too much to the side of fluency over the last 20 years. When I was a pupil and used to teach, the pendulum was too much on the side of accuracy. We had to know all grammar rules and all the exceptions to the grammar rules, and still during our studies. And then, by now, oral competency, speaking, being fluent. But still, let's get back. Appropriacy, of course. Mood, another thing that is difficult. Each of us is more or less serious, earnest, joyful, cheerful. You should not become a clown or entertainer, but there are lots of funny, humorous materials. Just by Praxis Fremdsprachenunterricht, a wonderful journal, and this is my second PR item. There is an issue on humor, using humor in your classroom, YouTube videos, cartoons, pop songs, etc. They may liven up and cheer up our lessons. The teacher role, maybe the most important piece of advice, piece of warning. I guess we have become too much of a guide on the side. Guide on the side, coach, tutor, facilitator, learning enabler, personality developer, etc. What about the other side? Sage on the stage, giver of information, drill sergeant? No, okay. But being the boss, knowing who is in control, you are in control. You tell your pupils what to do. Learner roles as well. Gender. Yeah, can you go for male and female needs in your lessons over the course of the year? Media, You should not say farewell to the traditional course, Lehrwerk or textbook, pupil's book. Modern courses, modern textbooks have really improved so that you can use them, but use additional media. Take a song, a Guardian article or whatever, or from any other paper or song. Classroom discourse, not just questions, not just IRE. 95% of classroom discourse is IRE or IRF, impulse reaction evaluation or feedback. Have you heard, I don't know, have you heard of wait time 1 and 2? Okay. Teacher, pupil, teacher. What's the capital of Germany?
Berlin.
Very good. Wait time 1 between teacher, question, student answer. What is the average wait time 1? How many seconds?
Specific case now, or
Not in this case. According to studies, to empirical studies, how long do teachers wait after their questions? Have a guess. And please spoil the fun for me.
I think it's very, very short. Let's say approximately 5 seconds, something like that.
Probably 1, 2, 3 seconds at least.
1 second.
Whoa.
1 second. What happens? We did a small scale study. We prolonged wait time 1 from 1 second to 5 seconds. And the results were really astonishing. We got more hands, participation was higher, the answers were better in quality. We expected that. The problem is teachers can't wait. Silence is a problem. Can we stand silence? Try it out. Ask a question in your class and then really wait for 5 seconds. Very difficult for us. But that was clear. There were some other studies. What about wait time 2? You said Berlin and I said very good. This is wait time 2, between the pupil's answer and the teacher's feedback. Apart from the fact that teacher's feedback is very monotonous, consisting of 2 phrases usually. So we observed teachers, there was one male teacher who said okay 78 times. There was another teacher who only said and a third who said nothing at all. But this is the thing of varying our feedback. You should have a few phrases at your hand. Good, not bad, jolly good, keep it up, terrible, terrific, get out of the classroom. No, of course not. And of course not every half word is fantastic and super. So it should be, your feedback should be honest and it should be varied, that's clear. But you should wait longer. Again, a small scale study, we prolonged wait time with our teachers from 1 second, it is 1 second, from 1 second to 5. And now imagine what happened. What happens in your mind as a teacher? Not in the pupils. Let me give you 10 seconds time to think. Of course, we could do a think, pair, share technique. After 10 seconds, you ask your neighbor, and then we gather the results. What happens in your mind? What do you do? I told her, very good. What would happen in my mind or your mind if I waited 5 seconds?
Maybe the others would still think about the answer.
Right. But in your mind, in the teacher's mind, what happens? What would you change? Would you still say very good? Or would you do anything else?
Maybe you would try to reformulate your question.
Possible, or not just reformulate my question. I saw a hand down there or up there. No? Could it be that she says Berlin, and I wait and say, aha, Berlin. Do you like Berlin? Have you been there? What's so special about it? Why don't you go there more often? Is there a football club which deserves its name in Berlin? Or things like that. And we could really come into communication, communicative language teaching, CLT. Von der Inquisition zur Konversation, we may say. May really be communicative language teaching and not just testing you. Wait time 1 and 2. And of course in assessment we should vary. I'm sure you have heard about Friedemann Schulz von Thun's communication square. Going for a balance between the 4 sides. We have as an example, we have 1 grammar lesson on that DVD, and the teacher, no doubt a really good teacher, using lots of media, being very creative and interactive, she introduces conditional type 2 if clauses, and she gives a sample statement. If I won $1 million, I would quit my job and go to Hawaii. And when I heard her, I didn't like that. Can you imagine why? It is clear. Content. She gives an example of conditional type 2. Appeal is clear to me. She wants her pupils to repeat that. But what about self-revelation and relationship to her pupils? Am I too strict? I would say she sees it as a job. She would prefer to leave her pupils and go to Hawaii and do nothing. You may disagree with me, but that was a point when I... on the other hand, I don't want to make you too much worried. You can't reflect on every word and every sentence you say in your classroom, definitely. It's just maybe my prejudice. I don't want the word job in connection with our profession. Our profession is a profession or vocation. Beruf comes from Berufung. It's not a job. If you take it as a job, you may have grave, serious problems. I know I'm too pathetic and religious now, and too much of the moral pointed finger, or whatever that is. So be happy that you are not in my introductory course. In the very first meeting, I tell my pupils, there is one taboo word, and that is job. I don't want to hear it any longer. But let's leave that. Have you heard of Claire Crumch, 3rd place? We should also strive for a balance between the 4 intercultural views. When we do intercultural learning, C1, our culture, and C2, for example, the British culture. If our pupils can really adopt all 4 views, then they would come to the 3rd place, which is just an ideal. And balance between the 4 Ich-Bilder. Selbstbild, imaginiertes Fremdbild, Fremdbild, and Selbst. How I see myself, how I want others to see me, how others see me, how I am. Sounds psychological, but it may have a meaning in your life and also in your life as a teacher. Okay, too much of psychology now. Let's promise this is the last slide. Thank you very much.